You've never been with anyone, have you? James Whitman's voice was calm, almost clinical, but the words cut through the sterile air of the fertility clinic like a sudden storm. Sophia Carter's eyes met his, steady, unwavering, holding a quiet defiance beneath the fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. Every monitor, every piece of medical equipment seemed to fade into the background as the tension between them thickened, an invisible current pulling at the edges of the room. James could feel the weight of the contract folder in his hands, the leather smooth but suddenly heavy with implication, and he realized that this moment was not about money, procedures, or schedules. It was about trust, integrity, and respect. He straightened, drawing in a deep breath, and placed the folder on the counter between them, its presence signaling a pause, a boundary that neither would cross without mutual understanding. Outside the room, the murmurs of the staff were subdued, eyes darting from the door to the screens, as if sensing the gravity of what was unfolding. Sophia remained composed, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her posture straight, shoulders squared against the invisible pressure that seemed to press in from every angle. James's mind raced through the implications, the contract, the donors, the procedures, but none of that mattered in the face of the human element staring back at him. The faint scent of antiseptic mingled with the soft hum of the air conditioning, grounding him, reminding him that this was real, and that his choices had weight far beyond legal terms or financial exchange. He reached slowly into his coat pocket, feeling the reassuring thickness of an envelope filled with the first installment for Sophia's mother's medical care, a gesture meant to protect, not to impress, a sign that he understood value beyond his own empire. As he set it down, the soft thud echoed slightly against the tiled floor, a punctuation that seemed to mark a turning point. Sophia's gaze flicked to the envelope, then back to him, understanding the significance without a word spoken. In that moment, the clinic's quiet corners, the flicker of fluorescent light above, and the subtle shift in air felt almost cinematic, the space stretching to accommodate the unspoken dialogue between dignity and necessity. James finally spoke, his voice low, measured, carrying the weight of sincerity and the tremor of something more personal than protocol. "I will not ask you to sacrifice who you are," he said, letting the words hang, heavy and deliberate. Sophia's lips curved slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of relief and respect, as if she had been holding her breath for this very moment and could finally exhale. The subtle click of a monitor registering a heartbeat elsewhere in the clinic reminded them both that life, fragile and persistent, continued beyond the tension of this encounter. James leaned back just enough to let the envelope sit undisturbed, a silent promise of support without intrusion. And for the first time in the room, there was a sense of equilibrium, a recognition that boundaries could be respected, and that true courage was often quiet, contained in the smallest acts of integrity. Sophia's eyes softened, though her posture remained unwavering, and James allowed himself a brief exhale, acknowledging that this first act of respect had changed the dynamic entirely, setting the stage for the revelations yet to come, the DNA that would bind their fates and the choices that would test both their resolve, hinting at secrets waiting to surface and decisions that could shift everything. The following hours in the clinic passed with a quiet intensity, the kind that made every tick of the wall clock feel magnified and each movement deliberate. James Whitman remained standing, his hands resting lightly on the edge of the counter, eyes occasionally flicking to Sophia Carter, who maintained her composed posture, her fingers tracing the folds of her lap without haste. The fluorescent lights above cast a cool glow, illuminating the subtle lines of concentration on their faces, and the hum of the air conditioning was the only sound other than the soft beeping of a distant monitor. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the ethical and emotional decisions being navigated within these walls, and yet inside, every breath and glance carried weight. James finally cleared his throat, the sound soft but carrying a resonance of seriousness that demanded attention, and he spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. "We will proceed, but only in a way that ensures your autonomy is respected," he said, his gaze unwavering, making it clear that no pressure, no expectation, and no compromise of dignity would occur. Sophia nodded once, a slight but meaningful acknowledgement, understanding the gravity of the consent being honored. The nurse coordinator stepped forward cautiously, carrying a folder of schedules and protocol documents, and James took the initiative to walk her through each step, pausing frequently to reaffirm Sophia's comfort and agreement. Each reassurance a silent testament to the shift from transactional arrangement to genuine human consideration. Time seemed to stretch, the room holding a tense but respectful equilibrium, until a soft knock at the door announced the arrival of a technician with results from preliminary tests. James gestured for the door to remain open, ensuring transparency, and Sophia watched attentively as the technician placed the paperwork on the counter, the edges crisp and papers neatly aligned. James picked up the top sheet, scanning it quickly yet thoroughly, his brow furrowing at the meticulous details of hormone levels and embryo viability, and then pausing as he absorbed the implications for both Sophia and the future child. A moment of silence followed, punctuated only by the soft ticking of the clock, and then James looked up, meeting Sophia's eyes, allowing a trace of vulnerability to slip through the otherwise composed exterior. "These results are promising, but I want you to feel in control every step of the way," he said, emphasizing respect and choice over urgency or expectation. Sophia's lips curved slightly, a subtle expression of trust and relief, and she spoke in a calm, deliberate tone, confirming her understanding and readiness to continue under her own terms. The technician quietly stepped back, sensing the delicate balance of ethics and emotion, while James returned the folder to its place, carefully maintaining the order and calm of the space, a reflection of the deliberate care being given to each decision. As the session progressed, James and Sophia moved through each procedural explanation, her questions met with precise, respectful answers, his responses free of condescension or haste, establishing a rhythm that was methodical and reassuring. The clinic seemed to contract and expand around them, the cool light and minimal background sounds emphasizing the intimacy and seriousness of the choices being made. James occasionally glanced at the envelope still resting on the counter, a reminder that respect and protection extended beyond words, that actions could carry more weight than promises, and that each careful step taken now would influence the unfolding story in ways both personal and profound. By the time the meeting concluded, a sense of quiet anticipation lingered, the shared understanding between them forming a foundation not only for the medical procedures ahead, but for a trust that transcended the transactional nature of their initial agreement. And as they stood to leave, the subtle tension had shifted to a poised readiness, hinting at revelations and decisions yet to come. The path forward illuminated by the choices grounded in integrity and mutual respect. The next morning, the clinic was bathed in soft, natural light streaming through tall windows, casting a warm glow over the polished floors and sleek counters. James Whitman arrived early, his tailored suit impeccable, each step measured, yet beneath the calm exterior, a quiet anticipation lingered. Sophia Carter was already there, reviewing the notes from the previous day, her expression composed but eyes alert, reflecting a mixture of curiosity and determination. The hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of traffic outside created a subtle rhythm, a backdrop to the intensity of what was about to unfold. James approached, placing a hand gently on the counter to steady himself, and spoke in a calm, deliberate tone. "Today we proceed with care, and every decision is yours to guide." Sophia nodded, acknowledging the weight of the trust being placed in her, and they moved together through the sterile hallways, each step echoing softly. As they entered the consultation room, James gestured to the comfortable chairs and the organized array of medical equipment, a silent reminder that this space was both professional and personal, designed for clarity and focus. The technician arrived with preliminary embryo reports, laying them neatly on the counter, the crisp edges and precise alignment a visual cue of order and preparedness. James picked up the top sheet, scanning the data carefully, noting hormone levels, embryo viability, and other critical details, his mind balancing both the scientific and ethical dimensions. Sophia observed, asking thoughtful questions about the process, and James responded with clear, respectful explanations, ensuring that each answer honored her autonomy and understanding. The atmosphere was charged, but not with tension, It was an intensity born from mutual respect and a shared recognition of responsibility. Outside the window, the city pulsed with its usual energy, oblivious to the careful negotiation of trust and respect happening within the clinic. James glanced at the envelope he had placed the previous day, a tangible symbol of his commitment to supporting Sophia beyond the contractual obligations, and the gesture remained a silent reassurance of integrity and thoughtfulness. As they reviewed the embryo selection, James paused frequently, looking to Sophia for confirmation, ensuring that each step forward was guided by her informed consent, reinforcing the principle that this process was about collaboration and dignity, not control. The quiet clicking of pens, the rustle of papers, and the soft beeping of monitors punctuated the room, creating a cadence that matched the deliberate pacing of their discussion. Sophia's expressions shifted subtly, a softening in her eyes and a slight relaxation of her posture as she recognized that her choices were being honored fully, that her voice carried authority over the course of the procedure. James's demeanor mirrored this shift, a careful balance of professional composure and genuine attentiveness, his respect for her decision-making evident in every measured word and gesture. The technician prepared the initial samples, and James observed with quiet focus, explaining each step in a clear, precise manner, ensuring Sophia's understanding and comfort. And in that moment, the sterile clinic transformed into a space of partnership and shared purpose. The sunlight moved across the room, highlighting the thoughtful expressions on their faces and the organized equipment that represented the careful orchestration of science and ethics. By mid-morning, they had completed the initial steps with meticulous care, and a sense of calm anticipation filled the air, a quiet acknowledgement of the significance of the work and the decisions being made. James and Sophia exchanged a brief, meaningful glance, a silent recognition that this was more than a medical procedure. It was a collaboration rooted in respect, trust, and the shared commitment to ensure that every action upheld the dignity and autonomy of the person at the center of the process, setting the stage for the discoveries and choices yet to come, the ones that would ultimately reveal the full scope of responsibility, connection, and consequence. By mid-afternoon, the atmosphere in the clinic had shifted subtly, the initial tension now tempered by a rhythm of mutual understanding and careful collaboration. James Whitman stood near the counter, reviewing the latest lab reports, the sunlight through the tall windows casting a warm glow across his features, highlighting the focused lines of concentration that had become familiar to Sophia Carter over these past sessions. She was seated across from him, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her posture poised yet relaxed, a visible reflection of confidence in the process and the respect that had been consistently extended to her. The soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional click of equipment provided a calm cadence, punctuating their quiet dialogue and the precise, deliberate steps being taken. James gestured toward the embryo charts spread before them, explaining the viability metrics with clarity, careful to ensure that Sophia's understanding guided every next step. Each number, each annotation on the charts was met with thoughtful questions from Sophia, and James responded with patient, thorough explanations, ensuring that she retained full authority over the decisions affecting her and the child they hoped to bring into the world. The clinic's environment, sterile yet intimate, allowed a space for concentration and shared responsibility, the cool light reflecting off polished surfaces adding to the sense of controlled focus. Outside, the city carried on with its usual bustle, oblivious to the ethical and emotional deliberations taking place within these walls, yet inside, every glance, every pause carried the weight of consequence and the importance of maintaining integrity and dignity. James leaned slightly on the counter, the subtle motion marking a moment of reflection as he considered the path they were navigating together, balancing scientific accuracy with human sensitivity, and the envelope resting nearby remained a quiet reminder of his commitment to support Sophia beyond procedural obligations. The conversation continued, measured and deliberate, with Sophia articulating preferences and concerns, each query met with clarity and respect, reinforcing the partnership at the core of the process. James occasionally nodded, acknowledging the thoughtfulness of her considerations, and adjusted his explanations to ensure that each step of the procedure was transparent, ethically sound, and emotionally supportive. The subtle shift in body language between them, the easing of shoulders and softening of expressions, reflected a growing sense of trust and collaboration, transforming the room into a space of joint purpose where scientific precision and ethical responsibility coexisted seamlessly. As the technician moved through the preparation steps, James and Sophia observed together, their attention synchronized, each detail noted, each action weighed for impact and consent, and the quiet hum of the monitors and distant city noise seemed to underscore the significance of their careful deliberation. By the time the late afternoon sun tilted toward the horizon, casting long, warm shadows across the room, a sense of calm anticipation lingered, the process having unfolded with both integrity and care. James exchanged a meaningful glance with Sophia, a silent acknowledgement of the trust established, the boundaries respected, and the collaborative commitment to move forward in a manner that honored dignity and choice. The room, once charged with the tension of uncertainty, now held a steady rhythm, a poised readiness for the next stages, and a quiet anticipation of revelations and decisions yet to come, setting the stage for both personal and procedural milestones that would define the journey ahead. The sun had shifted lower in the sky, casting long, golden beams across the clinic floor, illuminating the meticulous arrangement of equipment and paperwork that reflected the careful planning of the day. James Whitman moved with deliberate calm, reviewing the most recent set of lab results, his eyes scanning each detail with a combination of precision and concern, mindful of the responsibility each number represented. Sophia Carter sat with her back straight, hands resting lightly in her lap, observing the information with quiet intensity, her mind weighing options and possibilities with careful thought. The air between them was filled with a measured tension, not of conflict but of mutual awareness, as every glance and subtle gesture conveyed an unspoken dialogue about trust, respect, and shared purpose. The soft hum of the air conditioning blended with the occasional beeping of a monitor, creating a rhythmic backdrop to their methodical discussion, and the sunlight shifting across the counters added a warm, grounding presence to the otherwise sterile environment. James reached for the next set of charts, laying them carefully on the counter, and began to explain the details of embryo selection, outlining the steps with clarity and precision, ensuring that Sophia's questions were answered fully, each response delivered with patience and consideration. Sophia nodded, occasionally leaning slightly forward, her eyes focused and attentive, reflecting the seriousness with which she approached every aspect of the process. The technician moved quietly around the room, providing support without intrusion, aware of the delicate balance being maintained between medical procedure and human interaction. James paused at intervals to check for comprehension, ensuring that each step forward was agreed upon, reinforcing the principle that Sophia's autonomy was central to the procedure. The sunlight now cast long shadows along the walls, emphasizing the contours of the space and the measured movements within it, the room holding a calm but potent sense of anticipation. James allowed himself a subtle sigh, a soft exhale that acknowledged both the weight of the responsibilities involved and the reassurance of the partnership that had been established. Sophia's posture remained composed, yet a slight relaxation in her shoulders indicated a growing sense of confidence and trust, a recognition that her choices were being honored and her dignity preserved. As they reviewed the preparation steps together, James carefully detailed each process, emphasizing consent, clarity, and ethical practice, while Sophia asked thoughtful, deliberate questions that reflected her engagement and understanding. The subtle interplay of light, sound, and movement in the room created a cinematic rhythm, the quiet intensity underscoring the significance of the decisions being made. James glanced briefly at the envelope resting on the counter, a tangible reminder of his commitment to supporting Sophia beyond procedural requirements, and the gesture remained a silent assurance of his respect and attentiveness. By late afternoon, the work had progressed with meticulous care, each action taken with deliberation and thoughtfulness, fostering a shared sense of purpose and ethical alignment. The room, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, reflected the calm, yet potent energy of two people working together with integrity and mutual respect, setting the stage for the next phases of their journey, the choices yet to come, and the discoveries that would shape the unfolding story with clarity, care, and a foundation of trust. Evening descended softly over the city, and the clinic's interior glowed under the gentle artificial lighting, casting long shadows across the counters and equipment as James Whitman reviewed the final reports of the day. The hum of the ventilation system combined with the distant murmur of traffic outside created a subtle, steady rhythm that mirrored the careful deliberation taking place within the room. Sophia Carter remained seated, poised, her hands resting lightly on her lap, eyes focused and attentive, absorbing every explanation, every detail that James provided. The soft click of the pen on the desk punctuated the quiet dialogue as they discussed potential outcomes, probabilities, and the intricate balance between medical precision and personal choice. James leaned forward slightly, his voice measured, deliberate, emphasizing the ethical dimensions of each decision, ensuring that Sophia's autonomy remained central to every step of the process. "Every option is yours to consider," he said, allowing a pause to let the gravity of the statement sink in. Sophia nodded, a subtle but meaningful gesture of acknowledgement, her posture reflecting a growing confidence and trust that had developed over the careful hours they had shared. The technician moved silently in the background, arranging documents and preparing the room for the next stage, mindful of the delicate interplay between technical procedure and human interaction. James placed a hand gently on the edge of the counter, his fingers brushing against the smooth surface, grounding himself as he weighed the next steps, ensuring that every action aligned with the principles of respect and care he had established. The sunlight, now fading behind the tall city buildings, cast a warm, golden hue across the room, highlighting the seriousness and intention in their expressions. Sophia glanced down at the organized papers, taking in each chart and annotation, and asked a precise question about timing and procedure, which James answered with clarity, his tone unwavering yet empathetic, reinforcing the shared understanding and responsibility. The quiet intensity of the clinic, the measured movements of the staff, and the deliberate pacing of dialogue created a cinematic atmosphere, one in which each small gesture carried significance, and each decision resonated with ethical weight. James allowed a brief moment of reflection, a soft inhale and exhale that marked the balance between professional rigor and personal attentiveness. As Sophia processed the information, her eyes conveying both focus and reassurance that her choices were respected. The envelope resting nearby remained a tangible symbol of trust and support, its presence a reminder that respect could be communicated through actions as well as words, quietly reinforcing the foundation of integrity that framed the entire interaction. As the session drew toward its conclusion, James and Sophia exchanged a glance filled with mutual understanding, the subtle tension giving way to a poised readiness for the next phase, a recognition that the collaborative process they had built was strong and ethically grounded. The room, filled with the soft glow of the lights and the lingering warmth of the day's final sunbeams, reflected the shared commitment to maintain dignity, autonomy, and meticulous care, setting the stage for discoveries, choices, and revelations that would unfold in the following days, with every action and decision carefully guided by the principles of respect, trust, and responsibility. The following morning, the clinic was quieter than usual, sunlight spilling through the large windows and reflecting off the polished floors, creating a sense of calm that contrasted with the intensity of the previous days. James Whitman stood near the counter, reviewing the most recent data, the soft rustle of papers punctuating the silence, while Sophia Carter observed attentively, her posture composed, hands resting gently in her lap, eyes fixed on each movement and expression. The air was filled with a measured tension, one that was not anxious but deliberate, as every glance and subtle shift in body language carried meaning, each decision weighed with precision and care. The technician moved quietly, preparing the next set of charts and instruments, the sounds of equipment softly clicking and beeping in rhythm with the subdued hum of the air conditioning. James gestured toward the embryo selection charts, explaining the viability metrics and procedural steps in a calm, articulate manner, ensuring that Sophia had full understanding and authority over each decision. Sophia listened, closely, her eyes reflecting careful consideration and quiet determination, occasionally asking questions that James answered with patience and clarity, reinforcing her role in the process and the respect he maintained for her autonomy. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm, traffic and distant voices a reminder that the world moved on. But inside, every action was deliberate, every exchange a testament to careful ethical consideration and mutual trust. James leaned slightly on the counter, taking a slow, deliberate breath, grounding himself as he reviewed the next steps and potential outcomes, balancing the scientific and personal dimensions with careful thought. Sophia's attention remained focused, a subtle softening in her expression indicating growing confidence and reassurance that her voice and decisions were fully respected. The sunlight shifted gradually across the room, casting long shadows and highlighting the meticulous arrangement of instruments and charts, underscoring the careful planning and precision of the process. James spoke again, his voice steady and deliberate, emphasizing the importance of consent, clarity, and mutual understanding, ensuring that every action taken adhered to the highest standards of respect and ethical practice. The technician moved efficiently, preparing samples and confirming data, while James and Sophia continued to discuss options and probabilities, their dialogue measured and precise, reflecting the trust and collaboration that had been cultivated over the preceding sessions. Each decision, each annotation on the charts, was considered with care, ensuring that Sophia's autonomy remained at the forefront and that the process honored both her dignity and the seriousness of the procedures involved. As the session progressed, James glanced at the envelope he had placed nearby, a quiet symbol of support and integrity, reinforcing the commitment to uphold ethical responsibility and respect beyond the contractual obligations. The afternoon light waned, casting a warm, reflective glow across the room, and the subtle tension shifted into a poised readiness, a sense of anticipation for the next stages and the revelations that would emerge from the careful, deliberate decisions made in these hours. A mutual understanding passed between James and Sophia, unspoken yet profound, affirming that the path forward would be guided by respect, trust, and thoughtful consideration, establishing a foundation for the choices and discoveries that lay ahead, and highlighting the quiet strength and deliberate care that framed every step of their journey together. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall clinic windows, casting soft patterns across the polished floors as James Whitman and Sophia Carter continued their careful, deliberate review of the latest results. The quiet hum of the ventilation system mixed with the faint clicks of monitors and the subtle rustle of papers, creating a rhythmic backdrop for the focused intensity within the room. James leaned slightly over the counter, pointing to key figures on the charts, his voice calm yet deliberate, ensuring every number, every probability, was fully understood. Sophia's eyes followed each gesture and annotation, her posture steady and composed, fingers lightly clasped in her lap, reflecting both concentration and quiet confidence in the shared responsibility. The technician moved silently, arranging equipment and updating charts, a presence that was noticed but unobtrusive, allowing James and Sophia to maintain their focus. Each explanation James offered was precise, layered with respect for Sophia's autonomy, reinforcing that every step forward required her informed consent and thoughtful consideration. The golden light shifted subtly across the room, highlighting the careful organization of instruments and documents, emphasizing the intentionality behind each action and the deliberate care being applied. Sophia asked measured questions about procedure timing and outcomes, and James responded with clarity, patience, and a quiet emphasis on ethical responsibility, creating an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect. The envelope that had been placed earlier on the counter remained a silent reminder of James's commitment to integrity and support beyond transactional terms, symbolizing the ethical and personal care guiding their collaboration. The room, bathed in warm, shifting light, reflected the careful pacing of their dialogue, the subtle interplay of light, sound, and movement creating a sense of cinematic rhythm that accentuated the gravity of the decisions being made. James occasionally glanced at Sophia, reading the subtle shifts in her expression, the softening of shoulders, the slight lifting of her gaze, all indicating growing confidence and trust. The dialogue continued in a steady cadence, the careful consideration of each option, probability, and procedural step building a foundation of shared understanding and deliberate, ethical collaboration. Outside, the city moved on with its relentless pace, oblivious to the meticulous care and thoughtful negotiation unfolding within the clinic walls. The soft glow of the setting sun created elongated shadows that moved across the floor and walls, accentuating the deliberate movements and reflective pauses of the two participants, each action weighted with significance and intention. By the end of the session, a quiet anticipation lingered, the careful preparation and ethical diligence setting the stage for the next steps, the pending discoveries, and the revelations that would follow. James and Sophia shared a final, meaningful glance, the unspoken acknowledgement of mutual trust, respect, and commitment to thoughtful decision-making underscoring every interaction, leaving the room charged with poised readiness for what lay ahead, and a quiet confidence that each choice made had been guided by integrity, collaboration, and the careful consideration of the human element at the heart of every procedure. The morning light spilled softly into the clinic, illuminating every surface with a warm, steady glow, and James Whitman stood near the counter, reviewing the final set of reports for the week, his expression a careful balance of focus and anticipation. Sophia Carter sat across from him, poised and composed, her hands lightly folded in her lap, her gaze attentive as she absorbed the details of the day, every word and movement carrying weight in the carefully orchestrated rhythm of their collaboration. The quiet hum of the ventilation system and the soft, intermittent beeping of the monitors created a gentle cadence, underscoring the deliberate pace of their dialogue and the thoughtful consideration behind each decision. James pointed to key sections of the embryo charts, explaining the probabilities and possible outcomes with measured clarity, ensuring that every choice remained fully within Sophia's understanding and authority. Sophia listened intently, occasionally asking precise, thoughtful questions, and James responded with patience, careful to provide clarity while respecting her autonomy, emphasizing that each step forward would be guided by consent, dignity, and ethical responsibility. The technician moved silently in the background, adjusting equipment and organizing documents, a subtle presence that underscored the professionalism and focus of the environment without intrusion. Sunlight shifted across the room, highlighting the clean lines of the counters, the organized arrangement of instruments, and the thoughtful expressions on their faces, casting the space in a cinematic glow that reflected both the care and gravity of the work being undertaken. James occasionally leaned slightly on the counter, allowing a brief pause, giving Sophia space to reflect on the information and reinforcing that her decisions were central to the process, each action calibrated to uphold her agency and trust. The soft rustle of papers and the quiet click of pens punctuated their methodical discussion, creating a rhythm that emphasized precision, deliberation, and respect. As they progressed through the final procedural explanations, James ensured that every contingency was addressed, every probability clarified, and every ethical consideration discussed thoroughly, reinforcing the collaborative nature of their approach. Sophia's expressions remained attentive yet calm, a subtle lightening of her features reflecting her growing confidence and the assurance that her choices were fully respected. James glanced toward the envelope resting on the counter, a quiet reminder of his commitment to support and integrity, a symbol of ethical care beyond contractual obligations. The room seemed to settle into a comfortable, poised equilibrium, the soft lighting, measured movements, and quiet dialogue reinforcing the careful balance of trust, responsibility, and thoughtful action. By mid-morning, the session drew to a close, leaving both James and Sophia with a sense of quiet anticipation for the next phase, the revelations yet to come, and the knowledge that every decision had been carefully guided by integrity, collaboration, and respect for the human element at the heart of the process. They shared a final glance, unspoken yet profound, acknowledging the trust, diligence, and mutual respect that had defined their journey. And as the sunlight shifted, casting gentle patterns across the room, the space seemed to hold a promise of forthcoming discoveries, choices, and ethical milestones that would continue to unfold with precision, care, and deliberate attention to dignity. setting the stage for the ultimate culmination of their shared efforts and the proof of their collaborative integrity.